Hey, it's Howie Mandel, and I am inviting you to witness history as me and my Howie Do It gaming team take on Gilly the King and Wallow 267's $1 million gaming in an epic global gaming league video game showdown. 4 rounds, multiple games, 1 winner, plus a halftime performance by multi-platinum artist Travie McCoy. Watch all the action and see who wins and advances to the championship match against Neo right now at globalgamingleague.com. That's globalgamingleague.com. Everybody games.
I'm Indy Neidell.
And I'm Berns.
And this is the Baseball History Time Machine.
Built for the love of the game. Well, actually, it's supposed to be built for the love of it, but I had to change it slightly.
But what is that from?
It is a old South African Volkswagen advert slogan.
Volkswagen, the car built in the 1930s by the German government at the time.
And we used to have I don't know if it's still there, I'll have to double check, but we used to have a factory in South Africa, so we used to get Volkswagens rolling off the assembly line in South Africa. It's really good for the economy.
Okay. And for the love of the game is that Kevin Costner baseball movie, which
I
like that one.
Yeah,
I like
okay,
that
there
one.
we go. Yeah, so I've made it. I actually haven't seen that.
I enjoy it. A lot of people, it can be a little mawkish, but being a baseball fan, it's hard to not like it.
Okay.
I prefer like the documentary thing, like the Battered Bastards of Baseball, which is great.
Beer League is great.
I am today going to get back to the Sluggers of the 1970s miniseries that I interrupted the last 2 episodes to talk about Roy Face and Bill Mazeroski.
We've already done the guys who've had the most homers in the whole decade of the 1970s.
Yeah,
right?
we have.
And those who had the highest single season totals. So what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, there were sluggers of the 1970s who did not make either of those lists, but won MVPs. And I thought I would cover them and another guy.
See, that's interesting, but that sounds fun. Okay.
Before I do, though, as a complete side note here, complete side project to like my military history YouTube stuff, a lot of you guys know, a friend and I have a new YouTube channel out called Tales of the Number Ones, in which each season is a calendar year, and each episode covers a Billboard #1 single from that year. The first season is 1984, and the first episode is Yes's Owner of a Lonely Heart was the first new #1 of the year. And episode 1 is out now, Tales of the Number Ones on YouTube. Go check it out.
Check it out. That's a great song. That's a great song.
And now, back to some slugging MVPs of the 1970s. I've already talked about Johnny Bench, Reggie Jackson, George Foster, and Willie Stargell, but there are several more. Bench, of course, won the 1970 National League MVP, and the MVP in the AL that year was Baltimore's Boog Powell. But I'm not going to talk about him today. Most of his career and most of his slugging was in the 1960s. He only played half of the 70s, so I will cover him in Sluggers of the 1960s one day.
Okay, but hang on then. Who are we going to start with today?
We start with the other guy, a guy who did not win an MVP, though he did win a homer title in the 1970s, and that's why I want to mention him.
And whomst may he be?
Whost?
Whomst.
Okay, whomst, okay.
Whomst may he be?
He is Bill Melton, or Belton Bill Melton.
Okay, that's a great nickname. I don't think I've ever heard of him. Why was his homer title so special back in the day?
Melton led the American League in homers in 1971 with 33. Thing is, he played for the White Sox, and that homer title was the first time a White Sox ever led the league in homers.
Going back to 1901?
Yep, 70 whole years. The White Sox were initially, if you'll remember, the hitless wonders of the first decade of the 20th century. In fact, in 1906, when they beat the Cubs in the first Subway Series, they were last in the American League in batting, in slugging, and in total OPS.
They were, shall we say, quite good in the pitching department, though.
Oh, yes, they were. Now, here's something else. That was the first season they'd finished last in the league in all 3 of those categories, all right? The next time they finished last in OPS and slugging was 1908. They were only second to last in average that year. But that year, the team as a whole hit a grand total of 3 home runs for the season.
3?
3 hitless wonders, man.
Is that a record for homer futility?
There were seasons in the National Association in the 1870s where teams had 0, but it's kind of hard to count that, and it was way fewer games. In the early National League, Union Association, and American Association, Chicago once had 0, but in only 60 games. In fact, the only team with fewer than 3 home runs in a season that played more than 80 games was the 1884 Pittsburgh American Association squad, who hit 2 homers in 110 games.
How many games did the White Sox play in 1908?
156.
Hang on. 3 homers in 156 games.
Yep.
That is awful.
Yeah.
But did any team that played that many games in a season ever just hit 4 homers? Or
They did. The 1909 White Sox.
Oh. They hit only 7 homers in 2 seasons. That is unheard of. That's insane.
I'm just letting you come up with, adjectives. So but they did that. But here's the thing: they finished over 500 in both seasons.
Okay.
And in 1908, barely missed the pennant in one of the most exciting pennant races of all time, where they were half a game behind going into the final day of the season.
Hey, was that the season when Addy Joss threw his perfect game against Big Ed Walsh?
Yeah.
You talked about that one before,
I did.
right?
We talked about it in the shutouts. It was that season, but here's the thing: no one did more to keep the Sox in contention than Big Ed Walsh. From September 27th to October 5th, so 9 days, right? Walsh started 5 games. He shut out Boston September 27th. Then he pitched and won both ends of a doubleheader against Boston 2 days later, the 29th. Gave up 1 run in the first game, shut them out in the second. And then he lost 1-0 on October 2nd against Joss's perfect game. And Walsh only gave up 4 hits, and he struck out 15, but he lost. And then he came in relief the next day, the 3rd, and he got, well, they didn't count saves now, but retroactively he got the save. Mm-hmm. And then he started and beat the Tigers and gave up just 1 run on October 5th, another complete game, setting the stage for the final showdown against Detroit, the 6th, with the Sox half a game behind Detroit.
Okay.
But Big Ed Walsh didn't start. The Tigers scored 2 runs off Doc White in the top of the 1st, and then Walsh was brought in already in relief in the 1st, right? And in 3.2 innings, he did give up 3 runs, but the Sox were shut out, so White lost the game already in the top of the 1st.
So 5 games in 9 days with multiple...
Well, not counting the 2 relief appearances.
Yeah, okay, but with multiple shutouts. Like, I will never, ever feel bad for Skeens again. Because that's insane.
He gave up 3 total runs in those 5 complete game starts and that first relief appearance in an 8-day span. And then he gave up 3 runs in that last game on the 9th.
They didn't really need to have that much offense at all most of the time, did they?
They did not, hence hitless wonders.
10 points to Big Ed Walsh.
Okay. Cheers to Big Ed Walsh.
Yeah, for effort.
I mean, that's a Hall of Fame. Yeah. Lowest ERA of all time, 182.
I'll drink to that.
Addy Joss is second at 188.
Addy Joss is a legend.
Yeah. That has to be one of the best stretches under pressure ever. I mean, if you go back a few days to September 18th, from September 18th till the end of September, he pitched 4 shutouts. That's 12 days. Pitched 4 shutouts. And he had 6 shutouts total in September and 11 for the season.
The definition of clutch, when you page in the dictionary, should be a picture of this man.
Ed Walsh, yeah.
But wait, go back a bit. You said the 1906 World Series was the first Subway Series.
Right.
I know the Yankees hadn't won a pennant before then, but it never happened in the 1880s World Series of Brooklyn, did it?
Well, in 1889, the American Association's Brooklyn Bridegrooms, today's Dodgers, faced the National League's New York Giants. But the first subway line between Manhattan and Brooklyn wasn't built until 1908, so you couldn't call that a subway series. Trolley service didn't begin on the Brooklyn Bridge, which was opened in 1883, until 1898. So the 1889 World Series saw people either crossing the bridge on foot or taking ferries. Also, Brooklyn was a separate city from New York then. It didn't become incorporated into New York until 1897.
The things you learn here.
The things you learn.
I want to go back a minute again. The Brooklyn Bridegrooms?
Yeah, they got the name in the spring of 1889 when a bunch of the players all happened to get married at around the same time.
How long did they keep the name for?
Just 2 years or so, really, though it lasted a while unofficially as just the Grooms. But they won their first 2 pennants in those first 2 years and in 2 different leagues.
I just want to point out that you have yet to talk about any sluggers of the 1970s so far.
Sure, but I am just setting the stage.
Back to the hitless wonders?
No.
All right.
Fast forward the clock, past the dark days following the Black Sox scandal, to the next period of White Sox success, the late 1950s, when they were the Go-Go White Sox who won the 1959 pennant.
The Go-Go White Sox?
They relied on speed and defense, stealing nearly twice as many bases as any other AL team, but finishing last in the league at homers with 97.
Still better than 3.
Yeah, and better than 4 as well.
Exactly.
My point with all this, okay? I do have a point. My point with all this is that the White Sox were the worst home run franchise of them all going into the 1970s.
Did they begin to lead the league or division then?
1974 was the first time they led the AL West, and I looked it up, and it was the only time until 2004.
Oh, wow. That's a span.
That's a span. And Belton Bill Melton, God, I love that name. And Belton
name.
Bill Melton was their first home run champ.
Here we go. Tell me about this guy.
Okay. Melton wasn't just the first White Sox homer champ, he was also the first White Sox to ever top 30 homers in a season, which he did in 1970 when he hit 33, the same as in 1971.
But who led the league in 1970?
Frank Howard, who I'll cover in 1960s Sluggers, hit 44. Now, Melton's Sabre bio says he was born in Mississippi and his family moved to San Diego after World War II. It also says he was kicked off his college baseball team for smoking.
Bad boy.
Then, playing in a weekend league in Pasadena that a bunch of Class A guys also played in, he was signed by the White Sox after their scout watched him hit a few 400-plus foot homers.
Jeez.
He was like 19 years old. He began play in the minors in 1964, was finally called up to the majors in May 1968. Thing is, in 1967, the organization wanted him to move from the outfield to third base, which he did, but made 29 errors at third that year. In 1968, he was in both the majors and the minors. In 1969, won the starting third baseman job for the Chicago White Sox. He led the team with 23 homers and 87 RBIs.
At that point, had any White Sox ever hit 23 homers in a season before?
9 of them had.
Okay.
See, I looked this up.
Okay.
I knew you were going to ask that.
Yeah.
We're starting to get predictable.
Yes, we are.
The White Sox franchise record for home runs in 1969 was 29 by both Eddie Robinson in 1951 and Gus Zernial in 1950.
No, never heard of either of them either.
After Zernial hit 29 in 1950, he did lead the AL in homers in 1951 with 33 and the majors in RBI with 129. However, he was traded to the A's after 4 games, so that's who he led the lead, not the White Sox.
Okay.
Ozark Ike, that was his nickname. And he was the real deal. He maxed out at 42 homers in 1953, not bad. One fewer than MVP Al Rosen, who missed the Triple Crown, from what I've read, by 1 step in the last game of the season, losing the batting title to Mickey Vernon 337 to 336 because he was thrown out at first.
Painful. What about Eddie, Robinson?
Eddie Robinson played with 7 of the 8 American League teams in a 13-year career. He only did not play for the Red Sox in the whole league.
Did anyone ever play for all the teams in their league?
And no, not in the career, no. 7 out of 8 is the max for one league in the 8-team league.
That's impressive.
But now, the most franchises played for total is 14 by Edwin Jackson, 2003 to 2019.
Did he play for like 14 different teams?
14 different teams.
Yeah.
But, back in the day, back when there were still only 16 teams, Bobo Newsom played for 9 of them, and he won over 200 games, but he still lost more than he won. Robinson played for 7 AL teams in a 13-year career, but only 6 times did he have more than 400 at-bats.
Did he always just hit homers?
He was good. He'd hit between 16 and 29 homers each of those years. He was a 4-time All-Star. But back to Bill Melton, right? He was great in 1969, but the White Sox, who'd come close to the pennant in 1967, were second to last 2 years later. And then in 1970, they lost 106 games.
Wow, they really came down to earth pretty quickly again.
It really did suck pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Melton was an all-star for the only time in 1971 when he led the league in homers. He hit 12 of those 33 homers in just the month of June, and he had 20 in the first half of the season.
Well, it makes sense that he would have been an all-star, right?
Here's something interesting. Near the end of the season, Reggie Jackson, Norm Cash, and Melton were tied for the league lead at 30. And then Jackson hit 1 to take the lead. And then Cash hit 2 on September 28th, my 4th birthday. On the 29th, the White Sox batted Melton leadoff to give him the most possible at-bats, and he hit 2 homers to tie Cash. And then on the 30th, the final day of the season, he hit 1 more to win the title.
Wow.
The Sox finished in 3rd place in the AL West, just under 500.
I mean, if you beat out Reggie Jackson in homers, you're doing all right.
You had a good year.
Yeah, you're having a pretty good time.
Even if he had a shitty year, you're doing good.
He has his own chocolate bar.
Well, Mike Epstein did that in 1972. Remember? That's how he talked about.
I mean, I like Mike Epstein.
Yeah.
The one Epstein that I'm actually cool to hang out with.
I would hang out with Mike
100%.
Epstein. Yeah. If Mike, he's got that batting school.
Yes.
He should put it on an island.
No, you should not.
Well,
Take the island back.
You have to give it a different name than the obvious one, right? You can call
the
it
Epstein Island School of Hitting?
Batting Island.
Batting. I actually like that. That's a pretty good name.
Sure.
Batting Island, just batting cages as far as the eye
And that's
can
all
see.
that's all there is to do.
Nothing but batting. You can sleep, you can eat, and you're going to
You
go to the
batting
cages.
cages.
That's it.
I'd go there. Okay, anybody out there, tell Mike Epstein and his son that they should move their... No, don't tell them they should move their stuff to an island. Oh, my God. Okay. Well, anyhow, would you like to know what happened to the White Sox in 1972?
What happened to the White Sox in 1972?
Well, in 1972, the White Sox had their second home run champ ever, 1 year after the first, whom I will talk about after Bill Melton.
With 2 Homer champs, they should have done okay, right?
Good. They also had All-Star Carlos May. They had Cy Young runner-up Wilbur Wood, who pitched 376 innings.
You mentioned him before. That's insanity, though.
They had technically a 4-man rotation that year, but it was more like a 3-man one because 3 guys each started 40-plus games.
Jeez.
Wood, Tom Bradley, and Stan Bonson. In fact, those 3 started 130 out of the team's 154 games.
Hang on, why only 154? Why not 162?
That was because the start of the 1972 season was delayed by the first ever baseball strike, right? Which is a shame because Wood would have definitely started 50 or 51 games that year. His 49 tied Ed Walsh from that 1908 season for the second most in a season in the 20th century, behind Jack Cheeseborough's 51 in 1904, which he could have tied if he'd had, another week.
My 2026 baseball mind cannot comprehend or process such numbers as a pitcher to start. That is
49 games.
That is insane.
Wood started 48 more in 1973, which is tied with Iron Man McGinnity for the third most of the 20th century. So 2 of the top 5 totals of games started in the 20th century are by Wilbur Wood.
When was the last time someone had 3 guys that started 40-plus games on the same team before that?
Before that, you will be surprised. There are 3, and only 3 teams in the 20th century that had 3 starters who started 40 or more games the same season. And they are the 1972 White Sox,
the White Sox.
and the 1965 and 69 Dodgers.
Really? I did not expect the Dodgers to
No?
be...
Well, in 1965, they had Koufax, Drysdale, and Claude Osteen. And in 1969, they had Bill Singer, Don Sutton, and Claude Osteen.
I'm impressed with this Claude Osteen.
He was often overshadowed by guys like Koufax or Drysdale, Hall of Famer guys.
There's no shame. There's no shame in that.
But he did have 8 straight seasons with over 35 starts, with those 2 over 40, and he was a 3-time All-Star.
Sidetrack time?
No, not today. I'll get back to Claude Osteen one day. I want to get back to Bill Melton.
All right. How did Bill Melton do in the 1972 with the beefed-up version of the White Sox?
He fell off his roof before the season started,
Oh,
got a herniated disc, played just 57 games, homered just 7 times, and the Sox still finished only in second, 5.5 games behind the A's.
I mean, he could have been the difference,
He
the
could have.
guy that made all the difference. Like,
Yeah.
5.5 games is not a lot,
No.
and you're missing your ace.
Yeah, the guy, the home run guy.
Was that the beginning of the end for him? I don't want to say it like
not
that,
quite yet,
but
not quite yet.
herniated discs does not go well
But
with pitchers.
in 1973, he had the best average of his career, 277, and he hit 20 homers. But the reigning MVP got hurt that year.
This dude can't catch a break.
Thing is, Melton was in pretty constant pain as well by then. And as he himself said, this is a quote, "I learned from the doctors that when you're in pain, you protect your muscles by changing your swing." And that's what I did. I was never the same hitter.
Same old story. It reminds me of my favorite player, Chris Byron, with his issues with the Rockies, with his back.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. You can name 10 guys.
Sad story.
Well, in 1974, he became the career White Sox homer champ when he hit number 137. That's all it took to become the career leader, passing Minnie Minoso. But his offensive numbers were way down, and he led the league in errors in 74 and 75. He spent 76 with the Angels, hitting 6 homers and 341 at-bats, and 77 with the Indians, hitting 0 in 133. And that was it. He filed for free agency, but no one picked him up. But fun Bill Melton fact. You are going to love this fact.
right.
Remember when Michael Jordan retired from the NBA to try his hand at baseball?
Who doesn't? It was even news in South Africa that he had hung up the...
Jordan went from the Chicago Bulls to the Chicago White
Yes.
Sox. And who was asked to be Jordan's hitting instructor?
Bill Melton.
Belton Bill Melton.
Good for him. That's pretty good trivia.
That's great trivia,
That's
isn't
great
it?
trivia, yeah.
Melton passed away in December of 2024, so not that long ago.
rest in
And he's still way up there in White Sox franchise homer totals with his 154. I think he's like number 9 or 10, something like that.
And of course, you have to remember that he is the first ever White Sox homer champ, and no one can ever take that away from him.
I love when we come up with things that you can't take that away from him.
Can't take that away from him.
You cannot. Now, the guy who was the second and the third homer champ for the White Sox, because he led the AL in 1972 and 1974, the only times he won homer titles in his career, is a Hall of Famer and one of my favorite players ever, the immortal Dick Allen. Now, his career pretty much was split between the 60s and 70s, but he won the MVP in the 1970s, so I'm going to cover him here and not later with Sluggers of the 1960s.
I mean, sure, why not?
Allen's career was pretty much played entirely in the second dead ball era, or whatever you choose to call the low offense period that peaked in the late 60s. He played from 1963 to 1977. So, right during that era.
Yeah.
So while his raw career numbers might not look all-time great, 292 career batting average, 378 on base percentage, 534 slugging. Okay, well, the last one is pretty good.
It's pretty good, yeah.
His career OPS is 912. There's a lot of people higher than that.
Yeah.
But his OPS plus for his career, when that is adjusted for his era and everything, is 159.
Oh, wow.
And that is at the bottom of the top 25 all time and is ahead of Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, and Joe DiMaggio. So he is in all-time elite company.
For real?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Now, Allen came up with the 1964 Phillies, and he was a big rookie star. And the Phillies had also gotten pitching star and future Hall of Famer Jim Bunning from the Tigers. And they were a really good team, but that team had one of the worst collapses in history. They were 6.5 games in first place, with 12 games left to play, and proceeded to lose 10 straight games and the pennant to the Cardinals. I can but imagine how that felt for long-term fans, because at that time, and going all the way back to 1883, the Phillies had only won 2 pennants, 1915 and 1950, and exactly 1 World Series game after those 2 pennants. They wouldn't win a series until 1980, after 97 seasons of frustration.
Can you imagine being a Phillies fan in late September 1964?
It's really hard.
That must have been the hardest thing to watch.
You're 6.5 games in first place.
And you lose 10 on the trot.
If they won 4 games, they would have won the pennant.
Could you pay a team to lose 10 games? Like that's unreal.
A lot of the games were 1 or 2 run games.
Oh, that hurts even more.
Yeah,
so it wasn't like they were blown out or anything.
There were a couple blows, but they didn't just collapse like that.
Oh, that's pain.
Okay, let me get back to Allen, right?
Yeah.
He grew up in Pennsylvania, and he and his big brothers Hank and Ronnie were all-state high school basketball players on the same team. They also, all 3, ended up playing baseball at the major league level, although the 2 brothers were, they're just like footnotes.
Pretty cool with the whole family playing like the DiMaggios.
Yeah. A smaller version of it.
Yeah. Maybe not as great or as successful, but still.
Dick Allen went for baseball instead of basketball because there was more money in it, right?
Yeah.
And he had planned to buy his mother a house. He was signed by the Phillies, reportedly, for $70,000 straight out of high school, and he bought his mother a house.
That's a good kid.
That's a good kid. In the minors, he played shortstop, outfield, and second base. And it was his first year that he was told that he needed glasses. Remember, he always had glasses.
Yeah. But how were the Phillies back then? And when is this, basically?
His minor league career was 1960 to 63. And the Phillies were coming off some awful seasons. 1958 to 61, they finished in last every year, right?
Oh.
And in 1961, they had a record 23-game losing streak. In 1962, they did manage a winning record, their first in a decade, but they still finished 7th out of 10 teams. And in 1963, they improved to 4th, winning 87 games. Something you should know about the Phillies.
Yeah.
I will quote Dick Allen's Sabre bio. To say that the Phillies had a poor history with race relations would be an understatement. They were notorious for their disgraceful treatment of Jackie Robinson in 1947, and the 1950 Whiz Kids were the last National League champion without a player of color. The Phillies did not integrate until 1957, by which time every other team in the National League already had established black stars. Many of the early players of color on the Phillies were Cuban, Mexican, or Panamanian. Their first African-American player of significance was Wes Covington, acquired in 1961. In 1963, the Phillies AAA farm club relocated from Buffalo to Little Rock, Arkansas. Without telling anyone, the Phillies decided to integrate the team. Little Rock had found itself in the middle of the civil rights movement in 1957 after Governor Orville Faubus refused to integrate Central High School in Little Rock.
This is like watching an accident. I can't bear to watch, but I can't look away either. And
Yeah.
I can see where this is going.
Unlike the Dodgers with Jackie Robinson, the Phillies' office didn't work with Dick Allen. They just dumped him in the Deep South in the early 60s. I shall not say what the signs people in the stands brought to games said, expressing their views of black people playing alongside white people. But you can maybe guess easily enough. Away from the field, he was harassed in public, including by the police, to the point that he considered quitting the team. But another brother, Coy, cool name, came down from Pennsylvania and told him that if he did quit, he'd have to get a job in one of the mills back home. He did not quit.
It's amazing the shit that people would have to put up just to play a game.
A game. It is
It's
a game
just a
when it
game.
comes
It's
to-
not that deep, bro.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not that deep. It's a game of baseball.
I just never understood, Leo, even if there was some subset of humanity that I hated, if they had a really good pitcher, I want him on the Astros.
Yeah, exactly. I don't like he's making your team better. How are you
Yeah.
abusing your own player? Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's a good thing for the team he didn't quit, because by the end of the season, the team's fans voted him team MVP. And he led that league, the International League, in homers and RBIs. He then played 10 games late season with the Phillies. So, 1964 rolls around, and Richie Allen,
Richie?
the team, the Phillies, insisted on calling him Richie. And that's how it always was in the newspapers and the baseball cards and stuff.
But why?
I'm not entirely sure. The internet has a couple of theories. Trying to link him with the Phillies 50-star Richie Ashburn, maybe. Maybe a diminutive name to sort of put him down. But he called himself Dick Allen. He did not like being called Richie. And he was always Richie in all the papers.
So people would just refer to him as Richie, and he's like, dude, that's not my
Richie
name.
Allen. Well, yeah. But there were other guys like that. In the 50s, when Roberto Clemente called up, he was called Bob Clemente.
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's on his baseball
no.
card.
That's insane.
Anyhow, Richie Allen was installed at third base by manager Gene Mauch, and he had never played third base before at any level of play.
Why put him there?
Well, Allen was right-handed, and they needed his right-handed power to anchor the lineup.
Okay.
Their only right-handed power hitter in 1963, Don Demeter, was traded to the Tigers in the Jim Bunning trade, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 5 of the 1964 starters batted left, and lefty Johnny Callison and righty Dick Allen were the big punch, right?
Okay.
Johnny Callison actually finished second to Ken Boyer in the MVP voting.
But to suddenly just take him and stick him at third base,
That was decided.
makes no sense.
It was decided before the season in spring training. The Phillies had Don Hoke, whom Mauch really wanted to play at third, but he had an awful spring training, and Allen was just knocking the cover off the ball. So they had to put him somewhere.
How did that go?
So, he led all major league third basemen with 41 errors.
Oh, that just shades of Bill Melton.
Yeah, they did the same thing. Moved him to third base. And the Philadelphia fans, who, as we all know, have a reputation for being pretty nasty at times, they were really hard on Allen. They booed him all the time, to the point that not just his teammates, but other teams were surprised how much shit Dick Allen had to take from the fans.
From his own fans.
From his own fans.
Was he hitting badly at the same time?
He won the Rookie of the Year award,
Come on,
leading
guys.
the majors in runs scored and triples, hitting .318 with 29 homers, 91 RBI. He had an 8.8 WAR, a 162 OPS plus.
That's MVP level stuff. I
Yeah.
understand he makes errors or whatever, but if he makes up for it with the bat, who cares? But they still booed him. They didn't care.
Almost every game. And in the last 2 weeks of the season, when the Phils were losing 10 straight and blowing the pennant, Allen hit .429 and had an 11-game hitting streak.
One man can't win the pennant by himself. Like, everybody else failed it.
Tell that to Carl Yastrzemski in 1967. No, seriously though, you are right.
Yeah.
Allen was the only Philly to play all 162 games, as a rookie too.
That's crazy.
And sadly enough, that was the closest he would ever get to winning a pennant.
He's never played in a World Series?
No, in 1976 he did play in the National League Championship Series, but they were swept by the Big Red Machine.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, but Allen was great in 1965. Okay, he was great every single season.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, over every full season he played, his worst OPS plus was 144. That was his worst, right?
Okay.
And it's higher than Bryce Harper and Freddie Freeman's career marks, and only 1 point lower than Albert Pujols' career mark.
And that was his worst.
That was his worst. And that was in 1970 when he was injured for part of the season. In 1965, Allen was an all-star for the first out of 7 times. And at the break, he was leading the National League in hitting, and on May 29th hit a 510-foot homer.
Imagine his numbers if he was playing in the 30s.
That'd be crazy.
Yeah.
But something happened to worsen everything. At batting practice, Frank Thomas snapped at Allen. "Who are you trying to be, Mohammed Clay?" Yeah.
Wow.
Cassius Clay Muhammad Ali, right?
Yeah.
Just in case anybody didn't get that.
Yeah,
I assume everybody got that. Well,
crazy.
this started a fight. Allen socked Thomas in the jaw, and Thomas took a bat and hit Allen in the shoulder, and the Phillies put Thomas on waivers. Now, Mock threatened to fine Thomas was out. Mock threatened to fine any player who talked to the press $1,000, and Allen was told he would be fined $2,000 if he did. But this also made everything worse with the fans.
Yeah.
They were merciless, and they wrote him incessantly. They blamed Dick Allen for the fight. They brought signs that said, "We want Thomas," stuff like that. The thing is, Frank Thomas was a great player, yeah, sure. But in 1965, he was 36 years old, and he was no longer even the starting first baseman.
Shitty fans, man. I feel nothing for Philly fans now, based on this.
Well, 1963.
Nothing for them.
Allen did live there year-round, and, he loved horses.
Okay.
And he loved singing, and he had a doo-wop group that actually sold pretty well locally in Philadelphia. Cool. But still, though he led the Phillies in most offensive categories year after year, Allen continued to get booed. He wanted to be traded. He was not shy about saying this. He even said this: "I'd like to get out of Philadelphia. I don't care for the people or their attitude, although they don't bother me or my play. But maybe the Phillies can get a couple of broken bats and shower shoes for me." That's a great quote. But when Gene Mauch, who did not like Allen's attitude in general, told the front office, "me or him," Mauch was fired, although it wasn't just because of Dick Allen.
But did he get traded at the end?
Eventually. He played 1970 with the Cardinals, 1971 with the Dodgers, and went to the American League after that. And just like Frank Robinson did when he changed leagues in 1966, Allen won the MVP his first year in the AL. He mostly played first base by then, starting to do it regularly in 1969.
With Bill Melton at third. Chicago was pretty good for him, I guess.
They were good to him. They called him Dick, for one.
Nice.
Not
Richie.
You think that wouldn't be that hard? And attendance really boomed the 3 years he was with them, over 1 million each year, and it hadn't been like that for a few years because of Dick Allen. He was the big draw.
Why only 3 years then?
In 1973, he missed half the season with an injury.
Okay.
And in 1974, was limited to 128 games, though he led the league in homers again anyhow, right?
Yeah.
But the pain in his back was so bad that in September, he announced his retirement. He did not, however, fill in the official retirement paperwork. The Sox traded him to the Braves, but he absolutely refused to have his home in the South again, and he told the Braves he would not play for them. So then, after 6 years and 4 trades, the Braves made it 5 trades and traded him back to the Phillies.
The prodigal son returns.
This was a different team, though, in a different stadium, and Allen was now greeted with standing ovations when he returned. Okay. And he was a big factor in guiding this young team and sort of molding them. Although, in 1976, the Phillies had a 15.5 game lead over the Pirates in late August.
Here we go.
But then they started to collapse, just like 1964. For real, the Pirates whittled the league down to just 4 games before the Phillies surged again and held on to win the division. And Allen finished his career with the A's in 1977. He died in 2020.
Can you imagine being a Phillies fan, seeing that first collapse?
15.5 games.
Well, look
at Cleveland last year.
Yeah.
Cleveland and the Tigers.
Exactly, to your point. But, boy, that guy could hit.
Dick Allen sure could hit.
So who's next?
There is no who's next today. That's it.
Oh, okay, we only did 2 Sluggers?
And only 1 MVP, but 2 White Sox home run champs.
That's very true.
There will be a Sluggers of the 1970s Part 5, but not next time.
And why not?
Because before the next episode comes out, 2 things will happen. We will celebrate 1 year of doing this podcast, and the opening day of the 2026 season will come. So I'm going to call this the final episode of Season 1. And next time will be the first episode of Season 2.
Does that mean we're taking a break?
I see no reason to.
Me neither.
And I will continue the Sluggers of the 1970s series in Season 2, but not the first episode.
And what's that going to be about?
I'm not sure yet, but it will be good.
I mean, they all are.
They all are, guys, right?
Yeah.
Everyone out there, thanks for following us this fine first season. You can tell we really enjoy doing this. And next time we will actually have a new home base, a website that you can go to and listen to the episodes at various platforms from, whichever your favorite platform is. It'll be like a communications hub between us and you guys. And it looks really cool and it's almost set up. And please, if you have not, go over to patreon.com and look up Indy Neidell's Baseball History Time Machine and join us at the $4 a month tier. For that, you will get the episodes a day or 3 early, depending when I edit them, and ad-free. And the money goes to things like ever more baseball books, Sabre memberships, recording equipment, and stuff like that. Oh, and the new website, too. We appreciate all of you who have joined us there already very much. Thank you.
And join us on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube if you haven't already.
And so, that is it for Season 1 from me, Indy Neidell.
And me, Berns.
And the Baseball History Time Machine.
Ding! Great. Great first season.